Alright all, like I suggested, in today's video we're going to be doing an unboxing and an overview. We have the Cooler Master MasterBox MB311L Micro ATX case. We're going to be running down through the specs of this. I'm going to be taking it out of the box and showing you what all comes with it. And kind of hopefully give you a little bit better idea if this case will meet your needs that you're looking for your next computer build. Let's jump over here and we'll run down through the specs here on Newegg. Alright, here we are on Newegg. And as you can tell, the day of the filming, we can get this case for about $60. It is the Cooler Master MasterBox MB311L ARGB Airflow Micro ATX Mini Tire with dual ARGB fans. Boy, ain't that a mouthful. The specs, it is branded by Cooler Master. They do make the case. The series is the MasterBox MB311L ARGB. There's the model number if you'd like to know what the exact model number is that we're looking at here today in today's video. It is a micro ATX case. It is black. The case materials, it is mesh, plastic body, tempered glass side window. It does not come with a power supply, but when you buy one to put in it, it does go in the bottom of it. Motherboard compatibility is micro ATX and mini ITX. It does have a tempered glass side panel window on it. LEDs is addressable RGB. Dust filters, it's got one on the bottom, the front, and the top. Internal 3.5-inch drives, that's for like your standard hard drives. You got two 3.5-inch and 2.5-inch combo. Internal 2.5-inch drive bays, you have two of them, so you can fit two standard 2.5-inch SSDs in it. It does only have 4 expansion slots. It is a micro ATX. The front port panels on it. There's two USB 3.2 Gen 1 USB 3. You have an audio in and out. You have one ARGB to 223 splitter, and you have one ARGB controller that's built into the case. Fans options for this thing. It's got front 3 120 millimeters, which includes two 120 ARGB fans pre-installed, or you can fit two 140 millimeter fans in it. You can only mount behind the front panel. I'm assuming it's the 140s. For the top fan mounts, you have two 120s or two 140 fans. For the rear, you got a one 120 millimeter fan. Radiator options, if you're wanting to do water cooling in this one, or an AIO. Front will support a 120, a 140, a 240, or a 280 millimeter. The top will support a 120 or a 240, and the rear will support a 120 millimeter. The dimensions and the weight of the case: the max GPU length is 344 millimeters. That's how long your graphics card can be if you're going to, when you're installing the graphics card in this case. The max CPU cooler height is 166 millimeters. Max PSU length is 325 millimeters without front radiator or drive cage, or it's 140 millimeters with drive cage and backmost position. So depending on where you have that drive mount inside the case in the basement is going to depend on how long your PSU can be on this case. The dimensions, which is height, width, and depth, it's 16.10 inches by 8.60 inches by 17.15 inches. The weight of the case is 12.10 pounds. There's some additional features if you'd like to run down through them. I'm not going to read down through all of them for you. Package contains the MasterBox MB311L ARGB. It does have a toolkit, and it does have a manual. The case was first available on February the 27th of 2020, so it is still a fairly new case to the market. And now, since we went down through the specs, that's kind of what this case can support as far as hardware goes. I want to flip you over here, and we're going to take this case out of the box and whatnot, and we're going to go down through the features, see if it matches up with what the spec list says. And then I'll come back with my final conclusions on this case. Now, since we went down through the specs of the case, we're going to take it out of the box and see if it matches up with what Newegg had in the specs for it. To start out, we're going to flip it over here on the bottom. As you can tell, I've already got the tape cut on it. Lift up the flaps. just like so. And you're greeted with the bottom of the case. Now let's flip it up here. Lift the box up off. There we go. Pulling it up off. And you got the styrofoam packaging in your bag. I'm going to remove the 2 styrofoam inserts here for protective. Seems to be pretty well packed, like most cases, not too bad. And over here in this insert, there's your manual for it. Kind of tells you about the features of the case and what all comes with it and whatnot, and how to hook everything up in it. We'll throw that to the side over there. Alright, we're going to pull the bag up off the top of it. And we are greeted with a nice little temple glass side panel here. My first impression, looks pretty nice. You got a full basement under here that covers up your PSU and all them cables. You got your temple glass side panel. Let's start out with the top. It says it's supposed to have a dust filter for the top, but it don't look like we got one. Or maybe it's inside someplace. There's your mounting screws for your radiators and fan. There's your 2 USB 3 ports on the front of it. Your power button, looks like it lights up. Your headphone and microphone jacks. Your reset button right there. Seems to be pretty well constructed. Here on the front, ventilation here on the sides of the front mesh. And the front of it seems to be, it is mesh, but it is fairly small holes. Fairly small mesh, but you do get mesh. Let's pop this front cover off here. Oh, I like that. It ain't tethered by the cables. You can actually pull this all the way off. Looks like that front mesh actually ain't removable. Or not very easily removable. Looks like it's kind of glued in there or something. There's your 2 pre-installed 120mm ARGB fans with all the cabling in out the hole. Not too bad. Looks pretty nice for a $60 case actually. Seems to be pretty strong metal in it. I do like the way that front comes off and you ain't tethered by the cables. And the way it connects, you do have these little plastic nubs here on the front panel that slides into the holes. I'd like to see some metal in that instead of plastic, but you know, it should be alright. You shouldn't be taking that off a whole lot. Okay, let's slip back on fairly easy. Alright. You got 4 thumb screws here on the temple glass side panel that comes off like most. This is pretty common practice with temple glass side panels. You got the 4 thumb screws in the 4 corners of it. I did have to tighten them up a little bit with a screwdriver to get them to loosen up. The whole front of it ain't temple glass. You know, you got the PSU basement down there that you see from the outside that ain't temple glass, but that's alright, I think. Temple glass side panel comes off. Them screws do kind of stay in the rubber grommets. It's pretty nice. As far as that temple glass side panel goes, it does have a pretty dark tint to it. I don't know if you can tell how dark it actually is or not, but compared to this side of the case, compared to this side of the case, it does have a bit of a dark tint to it. Inside the main chamber here, it looks like your standoffs are pre-mounted for a micro ATX motherboard. Seems like they're all installed where they should be. You got a decent cutout here for the back of your motherboard. You got quite a few holes here for your wire management. Looks like you got some down here as well, which is pretty nice. I mean, you don't have no grommets, but it is a $60 case. Looks like you got quite a few tie-down points for behind the motherboard tray for cable management. Here's a couple spots for your SSDs to mount on top of your PSU shroud. That's pretty nice, not bad. Spinning around here to the back of it here. It's a pretty common layout. There's where your 120 fan goes into it. There's where your I/O shield goes for your motherboard. There's your expansion slots for your graphics cards and Elgato capture cords or any kind of expansion slots that you may need. They do break out. I'd rather see the kind that's replaceable, you know, that you can take in and out, but this one does have the breakout ones. You have to twist them back and forth to break them out. Don't look like there's any kind of, looks like the power supply slides in from behind and you put the screws in. You don't have no brackets or nothing on the back of this case, like the old style is. Looking at the bottom of the case, it does come with a cheap dust filter down here below your PSU basement to help block the dust out of your PSU. As you can tell, it don't slide out. It's one of the old cheap styles. For a $60 case, I think they could have done a little bit better on that. But it is functional, I guess. They do, of course, $60 case, they do have to cut some corners to keep the price of them down. I will slip that back up in there. Okay, the feet, they do have some feet on here, on the four corners. Looks like it lifts it up a little bit off the countertop or off your desktop. Got a little bit of a clearance there for, I mean, it's probably a finger thickness for clearance for your airflow in the bottom. Let's spin you around here. The back side over here. Loosen them up. They do seem to be captive thumb screws. Grab a hold of the panel, slide it back just a little bit there, about ½ inch or so. That's a pretty sturdy panel. It's actually pretty thick. There's your top dust filter for the top, which most people don't use top dust filters. That's usually an outlet or an exhaust instead of an intake, so you really don't need that filter. But they do add a magnetic dust filter for the top. Pretty common side panel there. Alright, now looking at the back, here's all your front umbilicals. You know, your USB 3, your power switch, your LED switch, your fan cables and all that. Get that old wire tie out of there. If you watch some other videos, I don't agree with wire ties. Let's see what else we got down here. We got a bag of goodies, it looks like, as well. There's a bag of goodies. We'll go through that here in a second. What we got here? These here's your fan cables. Okay, these here cables right here, they look to be your typical 3-pin headers, your DC fan headers. Not too sure on what that white cable would be for. I guess if you want to daisy chain a couple more together or something, I guess. That's what it looks like. They are only DC fans, but most commonly that's pretty, you know, it's pretty typical in these cheaper cases. And here is your ARGB headers to hook up your ASRock and ASUS and MSI to your, that way you can connect your fans straight to your motherboard, which means you can control your fans through the software. And here's the gigabyte one, if you got a gigabyte motherboard. There's your 3-pin ARGB header for that one as well. Ain't too sure what that is. Oh, that's a male connector. Where you can daisy chain more than just the front ARGB fans together. You can add more fans or more lighting strips to it. Alright, as far as front cables, you got a USB 3 for your USB headers on the front of your case. You got your typical power switch, reset switch, HHD LED and your reset switch there. And you got also got your front audio that hooks into your motherboard. If anybody ever uses front audio, I don't know many people that do. Like I mentioned, when we was looking at the front of the case, it does have quite a few tie downs for your cables, so you can do some cable management. I'd like to see some down in here somewhere. But, you know, it is what it is. Looks like you could probably attach a few more 2.5 inch drives back here in the back. Down here is your hard drive, 2.5, 3.5 inch hard drive caddy down here. Looks like there's room for 2 of them. Which it does look like it does have the old sled method of installing your hard drives. which we'll get into them. Looks like they're in the bag of goodies that we get with the case. Okay, now for the goodies. The bag of goodies that we get. This is the ARGB controller inside. So the controller that they ship with the case ain't actually connected. You have to connect it to the shelf. Just dump all this out here and we'll see what all we get here. There we go. That looks like a ARGB controller that hooks up to SATA power off your power supply. It's got your typical 3-pin ARGB header on the inside of it. It looks to be pretty common. We got 4 sleds here. That way you can put in, when you put in your hard drives, you put these on the sides of your hard drive to slide them into the hard drive caddy. Looks like we have quite a few zip ties here that they supply for your cable management. That way you can zip tie them cables up, make them look all nice and pretty inside your case once you get your build done. Looks like we got some rubber grommets here, which I noticed that whenever I was looking at where the hard drives, where the SSDs connect, look like they're pretty big holes. Looks like these, you screw these onto your SSD to install them into the case. Which, if I'm right, these here's the holes. You'd have to put these in the holes wherever you're going to be running your SSDs. Put these in through the holes, and then that's what you screw your SSDs in through, which is kind of nice because that helps with any vibrations. But with SSDs, there shouldn't be no vibration because there ain't no moving parts. Maybe an extra step, but we'll see when I do the build in the case. And here they just give you one bag for all your screws. Looks like they do supply you with a tool to put your standoffs in and out of your case, which looks like all of them is pretty well installed in the case already. And then you got your motherboard screws in there mixed in with your hard drive screws, and looks like a couple extra standoffs in there. It looks like they give you a pretty wide selection of stuff as far as accessories with the case goes. Like I said, it seems to be built out of pretty sturdy metal. It's pretty stable. It's pretty I think it's pretty well solidly built. But let me get reset up here and I'll come up with the conclusion to the video, guys. Alright all. Now since we went down through the specs of this case and I showed you, took it out of the box and showed you what the benefits of this case is and whatnot, you know, for a $60 price tag, I think it's a pretty good deal. You do get the two 120 ARGB fans included. It does have a pretty good mesh front to it. It does have the PSU shroud basement for it. It does have a tempered glass side panel. For $60, I think you're getting a pretty good case. I believe over in the description of this case, I think they kind of undersold it a little bit. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Whenever I took it out of the box, I went through this. But they say you have two 3.5 inch places to mount your SSDs. But right here's 2 of them. And then you can put one down here at the bottom on top of your 3.5 inch drive cage. If you leave that in, that's 3. And in this photo, it shows 2 more of them mounted on top of your PSU shroud. By my calculations, that's a total of 5 SSDs you can have in this case. But it says down here at the bottom in the specs of it, that it only has 2. I don't know why they did this. I think it's an underselling point. I think they should have put that you can put 5 SSDs in this. Because if you're somebody that needs a lot of storage, you know, it'd be something that may interest you in the case. You know, if you're looking for something that can fit a lot of SSDs in it. So I don't really understand why they did that. But, you know, by my calculations, you can actually fit 5 2.5 inch SSDs into this case. Well, it says you can only have 2. You know, I think that's something that they overlooked. There is some corners that was cut on this case. Whenever I pulled off underneath the PSU, the dust filter for it, I think they could have did a little bit better job with that. You know, I like the kind that slides in and out. It ain't as much of a hassle to get them. I think they kind of cheaped out there. Which with a $60 case, you know, you're going to have some some places they got to cut corners to be able to keep the price down for you, and I realize that. There's no grommets in the holes, which that's pretty typical within a $60 case. I mean, most $60 cases you ain't gonna get grommets to fill in the gap holes. But for a $60 case, and you're getting a mesh front panel, you're getting the 2 ARGB 120 fans included in it, with that full basement, you know, shroud to cover up all your extra cables and whatnot that you don't need in the build. It's nice, you know, the tempered glass side panel. You know, everybody needs ARGB anymore, and everybody needs tempered glass side panel. For 60 bucks, I think you can't go wrong with it. I've said several times throughout the video while I was taking it out of the box, it seems to be pretty sturdy. It's pretty strong metal. So I'm kind of anxious to get my build done in this thing, which I will be doing a build in this. But that's kind of my first impressions of the case. Of course, if you want my full impressions, you know, I'll have to do the build in it, which will be coming up here on the channel. If you like this kind of content, make sure you go down and give me thumbs up. If not, give me thumbs down. There's that comment section below. I go through them every weekend, Saturday morning, 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time here in the U.S. And if you really like this kind of content, make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn that notification bell, where you're notified next time I put out a video or go live here on YouTube. There's also links in the description below for Instagram and Twitter if you'd like to come there and follow me. I won't kill your inbox, but I do put up photos of new stuff that I got coming in. It kind of give you an idea of the videos coming up on the channel. And with all that being said, you all have a good day. And I'll see you in the next video or live stream.